Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video. The name of this video is Swarthy European Names. The reason I am creating this series of videos is to reveal the hidden truth behind the European history that we have not been given. This video will focus mainly on names common to Ireland, Scotland, and England. And just an FYI, these are just some of the names that I found. It is by no means a complete list. Also, this video will make more sense if you've seen my first video called Who Were the Original British, Scottish, and Irish? All the videos in the series that I'm making are meant to build off each other, so if you watch them in succession, they probably will make a little more sense to you. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about two very important words and the definitions for those words. The first word is swarthy, and the definition of the word is of a dark color, complexion, or cast, and that's from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary 1828. The second definition is of a skin color, complexion, etc., dark, and that's from dictionary.com. And lastly, of a person or their skin, dark, a swarthy face / complexion, and that's from the cambridgedictionary.com. Okay, so the second word we have is complexion, and that definition is the hue or appearance of the skin and especially the face, a dark complexion. That's from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary 1828. Listen, folks, I don't care how far you go back in history, these two words, swarthy and complexion, have not changed their definitions. So people that try to tell you that they mean something else, this is not true, and you need to go research for yourself and find a very old dictionary or dictionaries and check out the definitions. You'll find that they are virtually the same. Okay, so let's get into this next section called Irish, Scottish, and English names. This is page 1. And these names all mean swarthy by being described as dark complexions, black complexions, and brown complexions. Okay, I have listed here the names, meanings, and origins. Some of these names are going to look familiar to you, and then some, of course, will not, if you're not from Ireland, Scotland, or England. Also, as I said in my first video, my pronunciation may be a little bit off, or a lot off, actually, so please don't hold that against me, but I'll do the best that I can. And also, I'm not going to read through all the names on the list. I'll go through some of them, mostly the ones that I can pronounce. So the first one there is Arthur, and the meaning is very black. The origin is Welsh or Brythonic language. So that immediately reminds me of King Arthur. And if the meaning is very black, that's something interesting. The second one there on the list is Bran, and the meaning of that is crow or raven. And we should all know that crows and ravens are very black in color. And the origin of that name Bran is Welsh. Okay, so I'm going to skip down to Brenna, which means little raven, and that has an Irish origin. Next we have Cormac, which means raven's son, and that is of Irish origin as well. Now let's skip down to Sierra, which means black or dark, and that's Irish or Gaelic in origin. Then we have Kerwin, which means dark-skinned, and that is Celtic in origin. And then we have, let's go down to Kerry, which means dark, little dark one, or dark princess. Wow, and that's Irish or Gaelic. Then we have the common name that we all know is Blake, which means black, and that's English in origin. Then we will go down to Don Dubon, which means brown or dark, and that's Irish in origin. And then let's go up to the top of the second list, and we have Duff, which means dark, and that's Scottish in origin. Then we have Dougal, which means dark stranger, and that's Scottish in origin. Then we have Dolan, which means dark in Irish, or Irish origin. Then we have Douglas, very common name, and that means dark, and that's Gaelic in origin. And then let's go to Duncan, which means swarthy chief, and we all know that swarthy means dark, dark complexion, black, brown, dark brown, and that's Celtic in origin. Then last on the list there is Kerry, which means dark, and that's Irish in origin, and Kerry is also a very common name. Didn't know it meant dark. And I don't think the parents of these folks are calling them dark in a bad way, like they're a bad person or they have bad intentions or something like that. I think the word dark and the meaning behind these names are a descriptor of what their child looked like or what the family resembled, if it's a family name. because these are first and or last names. Okay, so let's get into the second section under Irish, Scottish, and English names. And these are additional names, meanings, and origins. And this is page 2. Okay, so that first one on the list there is Darcy, and that means dark, and it's of Irish origin. Then we have Devon, which means fawn or little black one, and that's of Irish origin as well. Then we have Donovan, which is little brown, black one, and that's Irish in origin. Then you have Dwayne, or another spelling of Dwayne, which means little and dark, which is Irish and Gaelic in origin. Then we have Dunham, which is dark-skinned man, which is Celtic in origin. So there's no ambiguity there. I mean, a dark-skinned man is a dark-skinned man, which is Celtic in origin there. Then we got Duffy, which is dark or black, and that's Irish in origin. Let's go down to Don Chad, which means brown warrior, and that's Scottish in origin. Then we have Fechin, which means little raven, and that's Irish in origin. Then we have Gethin, which is dark-skinned. Again, no ambiguity there. Dark-skinned is dark-skinned, and that's Welsh in origin. Then we have Kern, which means little dark one, and that's Gaelic in origin. Then let's go down to Cole, which means swarthy or black, and that's English in origin. Then we have Colton, which means swarthy person or dark. No ambiguity again there, and that's English. And we have Colby, which is very common these days, and that means dark, and that's Norrish. Then we have Cronan, which means the swarthy one, and that's Gaelic in origin. Now let's go up to the second part of the list there. Let's go to Muriel, which means blackbird, and that's English or French. Then we have Maguire, which is dun-colored or brown-colored, which is Irish in origin. We have Nigel, which means black or dark night, and that's English or Latin. And then let's go to Darcy, which is dark, and that's Gaelic in origin. Dwyer, which is black, that's Irish or Gaelic. Then we have O'Dwyer, which is black, which is Irish in origin. We have Doyle, that's very popular. That means black stranger, and that's Irish or Gaelic in origin. And then we have Donnelly, which is brown or black man, Irish or Celtic in origin. Again, no real ambiguity there. We have, let's go down to Doltak or Dultak, which means black-limbed, and that's Irish in origin. Again, black-limbed, wow, okay, that's talking about someone's arms or legs, right? Then we have Rybak, which means swarthy, and that's Irish. And then we have, again, Sierra, different spelling, which means black or dark, and that's Irish in origin. Okay, so you can all go and find these names on the internet, and I obtained these names, meanings, and origins from websites that I have listed there below. I'll read them off to you. Nameberry.com, BehindTheName.com, BabyNamesDirect.com, BabyNames.net, Mommyan.com, and NameNerds.com. And along with searching for these names, I stumbled across quite a few other names and their meanings. And I'm referencing names like Hill, Rivers, Cross, Castle, Knight, Brown, Wolf, Banks. All these names have practical meanings. You know, they live by a hill or on a hill. They live by a river or by, on a river. They had crosses by their houses or whatever, or they built crosses, or they lived near castles or built castles. They were knights. They had brown complexions. They had a wolf as like their family totem or whatever, or that's what they identified with. And then banks would be, living near river banks or something like that. So all of these names had practical meanings, and they described something that surrounded the family in some way. Anyway, that's my opinion. That's my theory on it. I really hope you can look at my research and then go conduct your own to verify this information. And then maybe you'll see that I'll quote the TV judge, Judge Judy, who says, "If it doesn't make sense, it's not true." So as I read these names and I think about them, I have to ask myself, why would parents that were white with white children name their children names that mean the opposite of what their child actually looked like? Unless, of course, the parents were actually swarthy, which means their children would be swarthy, and their children would be the same as them with dark complexions, dark skin, brown skin, resembling a raven or a crow or anything similar to that. So looking at this section of the video in the middle there, it says 3 main theories. From what I've seen on the internet in journals or websites, there are 3 main reasons that are given for reasons that Scottish, Irish, and English people have names that mean dark skin, dark complexioned, brown, dark, raven, you name it. The reasons are that the person has dark hair, the person has dark hair and dark eye color, and the person has bad intentions or known for bad deeds. So let's look at the first one there. It says person has dark hair. Okay, why that doesn't make sense is that many of these names mean dark complexion, dark skin, dark limbed, black limbed, dark as a raven, dark as a crow. And complexion, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, means complexion, the skin color, especially of the face. Okay, so that definition is not going to change. And that's why giving someone a name that means dark complexioned or dark limbed or raven or coal or black, when they have a white or a pale complexion, doesn't make any sense. Plus the fact that hair color has nothing to do with complexion. Okay, 2 different words, 2 different things. So looking at that second theory there, person has dark hair, dark eye color. Again, it's the same thing. They're speaking about complexion, and many times the definition of the name means dark complexion or dark stranger or a similar type definition. So saying a person has dark hair and dark eye color and calling them black, or a name that means black or dark or brown or raven, or just doesn't make sense. And last there, it says person has bad intentions or known for bad deeds. I think I mentioned this in another video, my first video, and I said that why would a parent name their child from the beginning a name that meant someone that had bad intentions or is known for bad deeds? That, again, makes totally no sense at all. Mainly because that child has not established itself as a good or bad person. So how are you going to know what its intentions are? Also, some may say, well, that last theory of the person has bad intentions or known for bad deeds would be reserved for nicknames of adults. But that doesn't make sense as well, because these people were known as like Black Hugh, Black Prince, Halfdan the Black, Olaf the Black. They were called these nicknames by their own people that loved them and liked them. So I don't think that they would mean bad intentions or people that were known for bad deeds. Again, this is my theory. But again, I'm going to have to go with Judge Judy, who says if it doesn't make sense, it's not true. Okay, everyone, let's move on to this new section called Swarthy Europeans. And as you can see there on the top, I have a chart there with a majority of the human skin tones. And as you can see, there are different labels there. They range from pale, fair. You'll hear the word fresh. I don't have it there, but you'll hear that fresh. Ruddy, which is like reddish. Then you'll have sandy. You'll have tawny, light brown, seguin. Seguin's like a reddish color, reddish brown. Then you'll have brown, and you have dark brown. And at the top, you'll see circled there, swarthy. And the 2 arrows indicating in between those 2 marks is kind of where I consider they're swarthy. Although sandy is also somewhat swarthy, because I'll explain that later. Okay, so there is only one way to have a swarthy complexion, and that is by having 1 or 2 parents or 1 or 2 grandparents that are swarthy. So one of the points that I want to make is when the girl with the darkest complexion becomes an adult, she could possibly give birth to a child that could possess any of the skin tones you see there on the chart, even if the father was her same complexion. Okay, and then on the other hand, if the girl on the left with the pale skin tone becomes an adult and she procreates with a man of her skin tone, or even the skin tone of a fair or ruddy girl, she could give birth to a baby that had those 3 particular skin tones. The only real exception would be if the man was a light-complected person with some form of albinism, whose parents and or grandparents had a darker complexion. In that case, the baby could just be about any skin tone determined by the parents' combined DNA. And if you look over to the right there, you'll see a little green box around the young man that has albinism. And I'd just like to reiterate that that young man with albinism, both his parents could have dark complexions versus the pale girl on the chart on the left-hand side. Her parents are both going to have very light complexions or pale complexions. So in wrapping things up, it's basically you can go from dark to light, but you can't go from light to dark unless you reintroduce a darker complexion. Okay, so let's move on to this next section, and we're still dealing with swarthy Europeans. And again, you'll see my skin complexion chart there from pale to dark with swarthy indicated. And below there, I have just some of the descriptive names and adjectives of some notable swarthy Europeans. I'm sure if you're a history buff, you will recognize some of these names. The first one you'll see there, number 1, is Samuel Horsley, and he was born 1733 to 1806. He was a bishop, and his complexion was black as a raven. Just so you know where I got these descriptive names and adjectives for these historical people, it was from the actual books that were written about them. And if you saw my first video, or if you want to see my first video, I highly suggest that you do. These quotes and descriptions that I have here listed are taken directly from the books and pages that were written about these historical figures. Okay, so back to Samuel Horsley and his description, black as a raven. And you can see a raven there on the right-hand side. And you can see how dark it is and black it is. And that is the description for Samuel Horsley. Although when you look at Samuel Horsley's painting, he looks nothing like a black raven. And again, remember, in these books and passages, they use the word complexion. Okay, and complexion means skin tone. It doesn't mean hair. It doesn't mean eyes. It just means skin tone. All right, so let's move on to number 2, William Douglas, born 1370 and died 1391. He was the Lord of Nithsdale, called the Black Douglas for his complexion. And note here, he's not called the Brown Douglas or the Tan Douglas. He's called the Black Douglas for his complexion. Okay, so on to number 3, Thomas Wentworth, 1593 to 1641. He was the Earl of Stratford, and he was called Black Tom due to his complexion. Let's move on to number 4, Hugh O'Neill, okay, 1642 to 1660, Major General, called the Black Hugh because of his complexion. Number 5, Thomas Fairfax, 1612 to 1671, Lord Fairfax, called Black Tom due to his dark complexion. Number 6, Sir William Douglas, 1286 to 1330, of Douglas, called the Black Douglas for his complexion. Number 7, James Methuen, 1650 to 1706, Lord Chancellor of Ireland, referred to as a tall black man. Okay, there's no ambiguity there, all right? Number 8, James Drummond, 1648 to 1716, 4th Earl of Perth, had a brown complexion, okay, not a black complexion, but a brown complexion. Number 9, Agnes Dunbar, 1312 to 1369, Countess, called Black Agnes for her complexion. Number 10, Anne of Bohemia, 1366 to 1394, Queen of Richard II, had a swarthy complexion. Number 11, Thomas Butler, 1532 to 1614, Earl of Ormond, called Black Earl for his complexion. And then last but not least, up there on the right-hand side, number 12, King Charles Stuart II, 1630 to 1685, called Black Boy by his mother for his complexion. Not brown boy, tan boy, but black boy. So I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say here is that they were swarthy Europeans, okay? There's no doubt about it. Also remember that these are just notable figures that were written about, okay? They didn't write about the average Joe, okay? The average middle class or lower class persons. So just realize that there were thousands of swarthy people walking around living their everyday lives. But, you know, generally books are written about important people, not just everyday regular people. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I just wanted to make this section of the video to reemphasize what complexion means. And I'll read again the definition from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, 1828. It is the hue or appearance of the skin, and especially the face. And the example they use in the dictionary there is a dark complexion. And as you look at the chart that I've assembled here, you have 8 individuals, 4 of which have a swarthy complexion and 4 that do not have a swarthy complexion. All these pictures I got from Google Images. The 4 individuals on the right-hand side that do not have swarthy complexions, they are listed in Google as being of Irish descent. Now, the 4 individuals on the left-hand side, Google considers them to be of African American descent. Although, based on my research, folks, we don't know if they are from Africa at all. They could be from a lot of different places. But the point here is that they are swarthy. Now you'll see this first blue box, and I put that around a woman that is swarthy, which is, if you look at her, she has like a medium swarthy tone. And then the second blue box I put around the gentleman below her, and he has a somewhat swarthy tone, skin tone, complexion as well. Now I'll move on to the gentleman in the red box, and he is much more swarthy, darker complexion. And then last, I'll put the green box around the young woman who is very swarthy, very dark complected, and you could probably consider her dark as a raven, which is the complexion that they gave Samuel Horsley. Although when you look at his painting, of course, he is definitely not swarthy or dark as a raven. Now, when you look over at the non-swarthy individuals, you'll see that they do have dark hair, dark eyes, but they definitely don't have swarthy complexions. So when you read these historical books and journals and everything else, and they mention people with swarthy complexions, these folks don't have swarthy complexions. They have dark hair and dark eyes, but their complexions are definitely pale, fresh, fair, but definitely not swarthy. So there is definitely a contradiction in the explanation for why the Irish, Scottish, British, and even some of the other Europeans that are listed in books and novels and journals as being of a swarthy complexion. And it's not just myself and other people saying that these Europeans were swarthy. Benjamin Franklin actually listed a bunch of different swarthy nationalities from Europe. And back in the 1700s, when he spoke about these people, these nationalities as being swarthy, I believe they actually were swarthy. And in future videos, I'm going to get into what actually happened to these nationalities of swarthy people. Okay, so let's move on to this next section of the video. It's called keywords. And these keywords are the terms that I search for when I'm looking in historical documentation, books, novels, journals, newspapers, those sorts of things. These keywords stand out to me, and I kind of hone in on these words. And I wanted to share them with you so when you see them, they will actually stand out to you, and they'll remind you of this video and what I'm trying to clue you in on, so that you will start to see the contradictions in what we've been taught and the education that we have been given. So real quickly, I'm going to go down this list of words. First one is swarthy. Second one, complexion. Third, dark complexion. Fourth, brown complexion. Fifth is countenance, and that definition being a person's face or facial expression, and that is from dictionary.com. Okay, so number 6 is olive complexion. Sanguine complexion is number 7. Number 8 is tawny complexion, and number 9 is ruddy. And ruddy can apply to both ethnicities. Really, ruddy can apply to just about any ethnicity. Any ethnicity could have people with red hair. But here I have several photos from Google Images of what many people in this country of the United States would consider African American people. But all these folks have natural red hair and ruddy complexions. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so the next section of this video I've labeled Black Irish, and I'm going to show you a bunch of historical American newspapers that happen to mention some of the key research terms that I went over earlier in this video. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side with Patrick Leckie. I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but just some of it. Oh, and also this newspaper clipping was from the Pennsylvania Gazette. dated August 13th of 1767. And going on to that paragraph, it goes on to say, runaway last night from the subscriber living in East Calne, Chester County, a native Irish servant lad named Patrick Leckie, about 17 years of age, swarthy complexion, with black straight hair, rocks much in walking, and speaks with a brogue. And speaking with brogue, a brogue tongue or brogue, basically means it's like a heavy accent or like a country Irish accent. Now, right at the top of that paragraph, I've listed the key points that I wanted you to take out of that, which is the name, the fact that he's native Irish servant lad, he's swarthy in complexion, he has black hair, and he speaks with an Irish accent. So just as a point here, the article mentions Patrick as having a swarthy complexion and black straight hair. So if complexion just meant hair and eye color, then they wouldn't mention black hair, because it would already be a given that swarthy complexion meant black hair and eyes or dark hair and eyes, which obviously is not the case. All right, so we're going to move on to the other paragraph on the right-hand side, and that goes on to read, runaway from the subscriber in Lower Dublin, Philadelphia County, the 29th of July last, an Irish servant man named Thomas Kelly, born in Limerick, but came last from Dublin, between 19 and 20 years of age, 5 feet 5 inches high, a dark complexion, very black hair, is an ill-looking fellow, speaks with the brogue. Okay, so moving on to the next section, also named Black Irish. This is a newspaper clipping from the Pennsylvania Gazette dated April 22nd, 1778. And I'll go on to read this paragraph. It says, $80 reward, deserted from the 13th Pennsylvania Regiment, a certain John Gillespie, a stout, well-set man, about 5 feet 7 inches high, of a dark complexion, black hair, born in Ireland. I'm going to skip down to the second individual, Thomas Bigley, by trade a weaver, enlisted in the Carlisle, an elderly man about 5 feet 6 inches high, dark complexion, black hair, born in Ireland. Moving on to the next section of the video, I've labeled it Black Irish Immigrant, and this is from a newspaper clipping from the Pennsylvania Gazette, August 21st, 1740. And this is actually Benjamin Franklin's newspaper, and you can see there at the bottom, it says Philadelphia, printed by B. Franklin, postmaster. So I'm going to go on to read the paragraph here on the right-hand side. It says, runaway on the first instant from Richard Porter in Talbot County, Maryland, an Irish servant man named Patrick Downs, age about 25 years, of middle stature, black complexioned, with a black beard, by trade a tailor. Remember earlier in the video I spoke about Benjamin Franklin and his disdain for swarthy European nationalities. So being the publisher of this paper, he is describing people that are being looked for, that are runaways or deserters. So he's going to list these people's descriptions exactly so they can be found by other people. And lastly, let me bring your attention to those 3 asterisks there. It says, there is no mention that a black complexion was out of the ordinary or that an Irishman has a black complexion. Honestly, I think that if a black complexion on an Irishman was unusual, this article, as well as others, would mention that fact. Okay, so let's move on to another article. And again, this one is titled Black Irish Immigrant. And this is from a newspaper clipping from the Pennsylvania Gazette, dated December 25th, 1750. And again, this is Benjamin Franklin's newspaper. Okay, so the newspaper clipping goes on to say, 4 pistoles reward, and pistols are gold coins. Runaway on the 13th from the subscriber living in Chester County, Pennsylvania, an Irish servant man named James Ward, of a middle stature, about 23 years of age, dark complexion, down look, sullen countenance, can hardly look a man in the face. His beard and eyebrows thick and black, his hair cut off. I want you to realize that the people in these newspaper clippings, these runaways, are indentured servants. And basically an indentured servant is paying for their passage from Europe to the United States via a boat, of course, because these are very poor individuals that have no money. However, they do have time, and they are willing to give so many years of service in order to pay for that passage, and after that, they can be free. or freedmen. I also want to quickly bring your attention to the description for James Ward. He had a dark complexion. He had beard and eyebrows thick and black, and his hair was cut off. So again, if complexion meant dark hair color and eye color, then this wouldn't make sense because James Ward's hair was cut off. So again, I'm letting you know that complexion means skin tone, skin color. It does not mean hair color and eye color, as some would have you think. All right, so moving on to another newspaper clipping, this one titled Irish Immigrants. And this is a newspaper clipping from the Political Intelligencer and New Jersey Advertiser, September 7th, 1785. And this one has 4 Irish servants with 4 different skin complexions. So I basically wanted to show you a variation of skin complexions. I've broken out the newspaper clipping into 4 sections, A, B, C, and D. All right, so A goes on to read, Daniel Tunney, about 17 years of age, dark complexion, short black hair, about 5 feet 6 inches or 7 inches high. Okay, moving on to B. It reads, likewise, Michael Fadden, about 26 years of age, a fair complexion with long black hair, stout, well-made, a weaver by trade, about 5 feet 9 inches high. Okay, moving on to C. Likewise, Thomas Kennedy, about 20 years of age, of a sandy complexion, freckled in the face with long brown hair, thick legs, and the left leg the shortest. All right, moving on to the letter D. It goes on to read, also a certain Edward Dowd, about 5 feet 4 inches high, much park-faced, ruddy complexion, talks with the Irish brogue, and swears much in his discourse. Again, so the reason that I wanted to show you this is that these are 4 Irish men with 4 different complexions, although all from Ireland. Okay, so I've labeled this part of the video Irish Immigrants as well. And this newspaper clipping is from the American Weekly Mercury, dated Thursday, May 18th, 1738, page number 3, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And these are going to be 2 native Irish servants. And this paragraph goes on to read, ran away from the 31st of March past from Moses Vernon and William Lindsay of Province in Chester County near Chester, 2 native Irish servant men. From Moses Vernon, one named Peter Ryan, of middle stature, blackish straight hair, thin-faced, palish, about 20 years of age. The other from William Lindsay, named Dennis Adagon, of a middle stature, swarthy complexion, black-haired, about 20 years of age. And then further down it says, has the brogue on his tongue. Also, if you read further down in that newspaper clipping, you'll see that Dennis Adagon was a redemptioner. And I've added a paragraph there at the middle bottom. It says, redemptioners were European immigrants generally in the 18th or early 19th centuries who gained passage to American colonies, most often Pennsylvania, by themselves into indentured servitude to pay back the shipping company which had advanced the cost of the transatlantic voyage. And that's from wikipedia.com. And also, just to let you know, the main reason I put this particular newspaper clipping in was to show you the 2 extreme differences in Irish complexion of these 2 gentlemen. One being white or palish, as they say, and then one being swarthy or black. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a new title, and this one's Black Scots. This particular newspaper clipping comes from the New York Journal, the General Advisor, October 27th, 1774. And again, these are indentured servants from Scotland. And it goes on to read, $10 reward run away from the subscriber on Monday evening, the 23rd instant. The following indented servants, James Douglas, born in Scotland, about 5 feet 9 inches high, about 32 years of age, a stout, well-set fellow, dark hair and black complexion, little pockmarked, with a surly visage, speaks thick and much on the Scotch dialect, by trade a brass founder. Okay, moving on further down to John Wardrop, about 40 years of age, 5 feet 9 inches high, thin visage, dark complexion, born in Scotland, which may be known by his speech, by trade a tailor. Okay, and lastly, we have Archibald Scott, about 32 years of age, 5 feet 9 inches high, dark complexion, short black hair, likewise born in Scotland, and a tailor by trade. So I'd just like to go over some of the key points here for James Douglas, born in Scotland, dark hair, black complexion, much of the Scottish dialect or heavy accent. John Wardrop, born in Scotland, dark complexion. Archibald Scott, dark complexion, short black hair, born in Scotland. And I just want to bring your attention to one point here is that James Douglas has a black complexion and John Wardrop and Archibald Scott have dark complexion. So probably James is very dark, maybe like a raven. And then the other two dark complexions, maybe dark brown. Okay, so let's move on to another Black Scots. And this one is from the Georgia Gazette, dated November 4th, 1776. And these are three runaways that are seamen from the brig Dominica, which is a naval warship. Okay, and the newspaper clipping goes on to read, runaway on Thursday, the 29th instant from the brig Dominica, John Earl Master, the three following seamen. Duncan McMillan, about 5 feet 4 inches high, dark complexion, black hair, pitted with smallpox, has had his left leg broke, which has been badly set, had on a blue jacket lined with green, short trousers, was born in Scotland. Okay, the next one is John Smith, 5 feet 11 inches, brown complexion, stout and thin, had on a thick brown jacket, a long pair of trousers, and a hat or Scotch bonnet, was born in Scotland. The last one there is John Roberts, about 5 feet 4 inches, very stout, of a swarthy complexion, short dark curled hair, carried away with him one brown and one white jacket, had on long trousers, and a round bound with black, born in Gurnafie, which is an island in the British Channel. So based on his last name of Roberts, he was probably Scottish. Okay, so moving on to the last section of this video dealing with Black Scots. And this newspaper clipping was from the Pennsylvania Gazette, dated October 20th, 1773. And these were runaways, indentured servants. And it goes on to read, $8 reward, runaway on Sunday, the 26th of September at last, from the subscriber living near Shipsonburg in Cumberland County. The two under-mentioned servants, Michael Jeffries, about 30 years of age, born in Ireland, about 5 feet 5 inches or 6 inches high, well set, has a scar on his right arm, a little below his elbow, likewise a flesh mark on his right side near his back, is of a dark complexion and has dark brown hair. Okay, moving down to Margaret Jeffries, wife of the above, about 24 years of age, born in Scotland, and speaks the broad, has a scar on her forehead, dark complexion, and dark brown hair. All right, so let's move on to this last newspaper clipping, and this one is titled British Soldiers That Deserted Their Regiments. All right, so I'll start on the left-hand side, and this newspaper clipping is from Wayman's New York Gazette, dated April 9th, 1759. And it goes on to read, deserted from His Majesty's 55th Regiment of Foot and the Honorable John West's company. John Watson, aged about 21 years, size 5 feet 6 inches, by trade a laborer, born in Dalranack in the Shire of Inverness, North Britain. Dark brown curly hair, gray eyes, swarthy complexion, broad-shouldered, and well-limbed. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the right side over there, and this one is dated April 7th, 1760, and this is from the New York Gazette, and it goes on to read, Joseph Merritt, born in Nottingham in the county of Nottingham, by trade a blacksmith, of a dark complexion, aged 23 years, 5 feet 6 inches high. And then I'm going to skip down to John Pike, born in Dover in the same county, by trade a weaver, of a brown complexion, aged 23 years, 5 feet 6 inches high. Okay, so moving on to a new section of this video, and this is called, So What Conclusions Have I Drawn from This Information? And as you can see, I've bullet pointed the major issues that I wanted to talk about. Okay, and the first one there is, this information has been covered up, forgotten, and disregarded in our current history. And basically, that's self-explanatory, but this information back in the 1700s was not unusual or out of place. And I say this because I find so many books, articles, journals, etc. that have swarthy European individuals. All right, let's move on to the second point. The words swarthy and complexion have the same definition today as they did in the past. And as I've mentioned before, Please go look at some of the oldest dictionaries and you will find that the same definitions are there for these words. All right, moving on to the next point. These given names or nicknames were given to people for a reason. Okay, moving on to the next point. These names generally described a physical characteristic of a person that stood out, or in the case of a family's last name, it represented the basic complexion of that family or clan. So if the family's last name was Brown or Black, then it generally follows that that family had black or brown people in it. If that family's last name meant dark complexion stranger, then it stands to figure that that's exactly what it was. And regarding the first names of children, meaning brown, black, dark, dark complexion, those would be actually the characteristics that those children had. So their parents named them accordingly. So this next point is kind of redundant, but in the past, these names were specific to persons' pigmentation levels, black or swarthy, brown. However, in recent times, the last 100 plus years, these names were probably given because, in my opinion, they were familiar or traditional family names, or maybe they just were pleasing to the ear. And also, most importantly, and I didn't write this down, but a lot of these families may have been swarthy at one point in the 1700s, 1800s, but that is no longer the case because they've married and procreated with non-swarthy people for several generations. Okay, moving on to the next point. These names were not white names for white people, at least not in the past. And that's just common sense. I don't really think I need to explain that. Okay, so my next point is that thousands of these swarthy Europeans immigrated to the Caribbean, North and South America, and Canada, and many were forced to leave their countries. And to that point, I'm going to have a video that covers swarthy European immigration into these different countries. Okay, and this next point, I think I touched on a little bit. It's many black and white Americans are descendants of swarthy European immigrants. Okay, and the next conclusion is that swarthy people are not only from Africa, at least not directly, because they've been in Europe for thousands of years. And I think you understand what I'm talking about if you've seen my first video and then watched this video as well. My second last point is that if a person was given a name meaning swarthy or brown complexioned in the past, it stands to reason that that person's parent or parents, grandparent or grandparents were swarthy or brown. And then my last conclusion and point here is that European history is also Black history, and I hope you're starting to understand that, because that's really where I'm going with all these videos. Now, after seeing this video or both my videos, if you've come to a different conclusion, please, I'd like you to share it in the comments. Okay, so I've come to the end of my video here, Swarthy European Names. And my first video was somewhat lengthy, so I intentionally kept this video short. I'm going to do my best to keep the future videos short as well. And when I mean short, I mean under an hour, because my first one was well over an hour. Also, I have many videos coming your way, so please stay tuned. If you found this topic interesting and would like to see more, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to my channel. And as I said, I'd really like to hear your comments, so please leave them for me. And then also, I implore you to see my first video. It will open your eyes and provide you with some very interesting information. Also, I will leave a link to my first video down below, so please look for that and check it out.